We're talking about the dreaded or exciting to-do list.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a to-do list to make me feel like I'm a productive human being. And I've got thousands in my phone, I feel like. I make a new one every day.
Right. That's
Where do
the
people
problem.
go wrong? Where do we go wrong, Charles?
So there's two things to understand here. The first of which is that there should be in your life a to-do list and a memory list, right? We are, as humans are very, very bad at carrying around the 10 or 15 or 20 things that we want to get done in our head. So what you should do is you should use paper as an external memory aid, right? Or your phone, and you have a long list of the things you want to get done eventually. But that is not your to-do list. The problem with that is that if you use that as your to-do list, it's overwhelming, right? You don't know where to start. In fact, there's been a bunch of studies that show that when people create to-do lists that have too many things on them, they will often, about 30% of people, will often include something they have already done. Because it feels so good to like cross that off, right? It feels like you're productive and you're getting stuff out of the way. And that is actually a negative thing. That's a drawback. Because what it does is it gives into your brain's need for cognitive closure. If you have a list of 15 or 20 things, your instinct will be to look for the easiest thing to get done, the easiest thing to cross off that list. But that might not be the most important thing. That might not be the thing that you'd actually need to get done today. So in addition to having a memory list, what you should also have is a to-do list. And you should write this to-do list fresh every single morning. And there should only be 2 or 3 things on this to-do list.
Wow.
At the top of the to-do list should be the most important, impactful thing to get done today. The one thing that you absolutely want to get done today, must get done today, that if you do it, it's going to change the course of your life. And then after that, you might put one more thing. You don't have to do that second thing, right? Like all you have to do is get that one big thing done today. But let's say you get it done by 2:00 in the afternoon. There should be a second thing on your list that tells you what to do next. And maybe a third thing that you're going to want to do tomorrow morning. And that's it. To-do lists should be a way for you to prioritize, not to remember.
Oh, that's good. I just breathed this sigh of relief as you were telling me I only need 2 things, because mine often look like, well, there's 7 things I need to do and there's 4,000 decisions that need to be made. How do you balance all of the things that actually happen in your day-to-day versus a to-do? Because a lot of leaders listening may go, well, Charles, that would be nice if I only had 2 things to do today, but there's 17, and if I don't get them all done, it's going to create fires for the rest of the week. How do you grapple with that?
Absolutely. Well, that's where your schedule comes in, right? Because you're going to sit down with your calendar and you know that you've got a call for your favorite podcast at 9:00 in the morning. And then you've got a meeting you got to be at 10:30. And by the way, your kid has to get picked up at 2 p.m. You have a list of things you need to do that day. But the question is, when you're not doing something on your calendar, how are you going to spend your time? Are you going to spend it canceling that magazine subscription because you really should cancel the magazine subscription? I mean, it's going to save you like $12 a year. Or are you going to write the memo that's going to tell your company what direction it should take for the next 5 years? I know which one is more important, right? You know which one is more important. And if that memo is at the top of your list, instead of 13 things, one of which is cancel magazine subscriptions, you're going to write that memo in between the meetings, in between the podcast recordings, in between picking up your kids. Now, the real question is, you just brought up, is there's 1,000 decisions inherent in each item. Even if you just write one thing at the top of your to-do list, there's a lot of decisions there. And oftentimes it's making the decision that's the hard part. So next to that one top thing on your to-do list, what you should write is you should write the first step. Whether that means I need to decide whether I'm going to bring Jim and Susie into this discussion or not, write that down. Because as soon as you write it down, you're going to start thinking of the answer. And then write not only the first decision you need to make, but also the first step you want to take. Right? You're basically trying, at a moment of calmness, at a moment of planning, you're trying to trick your brain into start processing the hardest initial steps. Because once you start writing that memo, once you make that first decision, it's going to be pretty easy. It's all downhill from there. It's the resistance to that first step that we have to get over. And the easiest way to do that is to just plan it ahead of time and then let it unfold.
Wow. That's powerful. Yeah, most leaders, like you mentioned, they want to do the small tasks, the easy ones, really fast, and then they feel really good and productive, and they procrastinate on the big one. How do you get those priorities done when it feels overwhelming? You've got an actionable step, but it still feels like, well, I don't want to do the big one first, Charles. That's not how my day's gonna go.
So I'll tell you how I do it. So every night before I leave my office, before I go home, I take out an index card and I write down for the next day the number one thing that I want to get done. And then the second thing that I want to do if I get number one done, but there's no pressure to do it. And then I write down a third thing that I think the next day is going to be my top priority, just in case the day goes amazingly well and I have time for three things. And then next to that first top priority, I write down the first choice I need to make and the first step I've got to take. It could be something as simple as I got to write a chapter tomorrow. And so the first step that I'm going to make when I come in is I'm going to close every single thing on my computer except for the word processor. And the first choice I have to make is I have to figure out what the lead's going to be. And it's literally just sitting there. Now, I write that the night before and I come and I sit down. At the end of the day, I know how the next day is going to be most impactful. I know how to prioritize. I know that it would feel awesome to cancel all of those magazine subscriptions, right? I would save $12, maybe $24. Amazing. But I know what's going to be most impactful. Everyone listening to this, they know what's going to change the game. They know how to move the needle. And so because I don't have to spend the time and effort to do it right away, if I do it the day before, the evening before I leave my office, then I have this chance to kind of plan out the next day. And my brain starts working on it overnight. So by the time I get to my desk the next morning, and I know that that index card is sitting there right on top of my keyboard, I've already been thinking about that choice. I've already been thinking about that first step. I've been asking myself, is this the most important way to spend my day? 99% of the time, the answer is yes. Now, sometimes I get to my desk and I think to myself, yesterday I thought that I should write that memo, but actually what's much more important is to have a conversation with Ben about how he needs to improve his productivity. And so I'll change it on the fly. I'll cross off that one thing. I'll write a new thing, or I'll maybe move everything down one and put a new number one on the list. But the point is, we have this amazing ability to get things done. Every single person has 24 hours in a day. Every single person has the exact same amount of energy and ability to focus. There is no one with a magical brain that does this better than anyone else. The difference between you and the president of the United States and the president of some huge corporation is the ability to prioritize. How much time are you spending looking at that memory list, that list of all those 10, 20, 30 tasks you want to get done, looking at that list and saying, what is the number one most important thing on this list that if I did it tomorrow would change things for the better for me? That should become the top item on your to-do list.